Do you have a sugar tooth? On this episode, we head to Louisiana to catch up with the cast from episode 2 of Innovation Never Stops. We'll deep dive into sugarcane production with Kassi Leger, a sugarcane producer from the Bayou State. Plus, Madison, Lachney, and James DeMoss break down how Trycera helped manage divine nightshade, an invasive weed species that can impact sugarcane yields for as much as up to 60%. Finally, Jody Lawrence from the FieldLink Market Report joins us to discuss how China's slow purchase approach to the recent trade talks and the impact of the recent Tyson beef plant closure in Lexington, Nebraska is going to impact producers across the Midwest. Stay tuned for this episode of FieldLink. Folks, if you enjoy the commodity insight from the FieldLink podcast, you can now get a daily deep dive delivered to your email and cell phone, as we're excited to introduce the FieldLink Market Report. The daily commentary will come to your inbox, and you can now take advantage of our text alert system, where critical market insight will be delivered to you in this new format. If you've enjoyed getting the daily email in the past from Jody Lawrence directly, you'll love this new format that will be packed with commentaries, charts, and market insight that will be delivered in a very easy-to-read form. Go to helenaagra.com. Be sure to sign up today so you never miss out on vital commodity news and information. While signing up, be sure to sign up for the FieldLink e-newsletter to gain valuable agronomic, finance, and product advice from the experts at Helena and others across the industry. It's all free, so be sure to register today so you never miss out. And welcome back to FieldLink. I'm your host, Bill Smith. On this episode, we're going to talk about Innovation Never Stops, episode 2, and we're going to head down to Louisiana, where we're going to sit down with some of our experts that were featured and highlighted in episode 2. Kassi Leger, who is featured in this particular episode. She's along with James DeMoss, also featured in this, and joining them also is Madison Lachney. Guys and gals, welcome to FieldLink.
Thank you, Bill, for inviting us and welcoming us to the podcast.
Guys, it's really exciting to have you here. And Kassi, you and I were talking in pre-production here a little bit about, this episode has reached so many people, and it's a great opportunity to talk about sugarcane and some of the things that sugarcane producers do for the American consumer. But before we dive into the episode, Kassi, tell us a little bit about your farming operation and your background.
So I am a second generation farmer in South Louisiana. My dad started farming sugarcane in 1980. And so growing up, I grew up on my family farm my whole life. 5 years ago, I actually bought out my dad and his business partner. And this is actually my 5th harvesting season. And so it has been going very well. We faced challenges throughout the years, different things going on from drought to freezes and everything in South Louisiana. I farm approximately just right under 3,000 acres here. So I have sugarcane, soybeans, a little rice, and a little crawfish. And so right now we're in the midst of harvesting season. We started harvesting in the middle of September, and it looks like we're going to go through around Christmas time.
Wow. Okay, so a lot of our listeners, Kassi, are just simply not familiar with sugarcane in terms of when you plant that crop and when you harvest that crop. Give us the journey in terms of planting and harvesting sugarcane.
So in planting time, if there's 2 ways really to plant, it's whole stalk planting, what we call whole stalk planting, where you plant the whole stalk of sugarcane, or billet planting. And we cut it with a combine into pieces, and we plant billets. We plant billets. We've been planting billets since 2002. And so we start planting really at the end of August. Early September is the best time to plant billets. Mostly people that plant whole stalk will usually start, depending on the height of the cane, the maturity of the cane, they will start planting sugarcane at the end of July, early August time. When they plant their cane, it is actually not going to be harvested until the following year in planting. Okay. Even though it's the same crop, it can be planted so many different ways. Each farmer has their different practices, whether They're using different technologies in planting their cane. It could be hand planted, it can be mechanically planted. So it's different. There are different practices on what they do. But what we do is we plant billets. We usually look for the billet to be approximately 18 to 22 inches long. Whenever we plant on a row crop. So it's 70-inch rows. Some people will do 72, some people will do 76. It's all in preference. And then after we plant, we seal the ground and wait for the cane to grow. We start harvesting really middle of September. So sometimes planting will run into harvesting depending on how planting goes. If we have a wet planting season, then planting will take a little bit longer. Harvesting is a little bit different. We actually harvest in every type of weather. We'll harvest whenever sunshine and dry. We'll harvest whenever it's rain and flooded. We'll harvest whenever we have sleet, snow, any type of weather. The only time really the mills will shut down is if a hurricane is coming. But it will never stop us unless the mill shut down. The mill runs 24 hours. And so we're harvesting. We get a different quota each day. And so it's round the clock. We never stop. For about 3.5 months, we'll harvest cane.
So you don't have to worry about snow days and rain days, and you can just cut and keep going harvesting, correct?
Yes. So, like I said, we have about 3.5 months to harvest. It's a very short harvest season here in South Louisiana. I mean, we work so hard and we have such great teams here and the mills who work with us substantially throughout the year to make this happen. In other parts of the world, I've traveled quite a few places to where they harvest sometimes a year. They'll harvest for 10, 11, 12 months, even more. They don't harvest when it rains. That's very different from South Louisiana. We harvest in every condition down here. I remember a few years ago when we had to take a torch to our tracks to unfreeze our tracks from the combine from the ground because we had caught a freeze the night before. So it's quite challenging in harvest time or even having sugarcane in South Louisiana. We're the northernmost part in the world where sugarcane is grown. So we face different challenges throughout the year here.
You definitely do. Okay, so Kassi, tell us a little bit about marketing. How is your cane marketed? Is this a crop kind of like soybeans? Just plant it and wish and hope you got a market, or do you have contracts, or how does that process work?
So we have 11 mills in the state of Louisiana, and you stay in your region. However, in North Louisiana, they have harvest groups that actually go and cut majority of their cane and haul their cane to the different mills. So I choose to go to a mill, which is approximately 10 to 15 miles from where I farm. And you have contracts with that mill based on the amount of tonnage that you're going to bring to them. It averages around what you're going to bring with them. Nothing is guaranteed, not whenever Mother Nature is your boss throughout the year. So you just don't know what your yield will be until you start really harvesting and producing that crop. And so the mills, we have 2 mills in South Louisiana that are co-op owned. And then the 9 other mills are actually family owned mills. So they have guys that go out and market to the farmers and try and get as much tonnage as they have to keep their mills going and their mills lucrative throughout the year. Throughout the harvesting season.
Wow. So when you contract ahead of time, is it 6 months, 3 months ahead of time? I mean, do you have a pretty good feel for, going into the process where you might be in terms of a market?
So it's very different. We don't go by world market. We don't go by regional market. We actually go. So whenever the mills actually pay the farmer, it's not a world market price. It's very, very different from any row crop that we have anywhere around here. I also do a little bit of soybeans. Soybeans are sold on a market price as well as rice. You go by what the market price says. Sugarcane is very different. It's based on the mill. The mill sets the price. So one mill may pay you, let's say, 35 cents per pound of sugar that you produce in your crop. Another mill may pay you 38 cents per pound. So the mills actually compete with each other on their payout to the farmer.
Typically, where does your sugar end up? The mill that you work with, do you get to follow that trail, Kassi? Where does that end up? Does it end up in a sweetener, or does it end up on the table? Help us understand that.
When the farmer is bringing their product to the mill, that's basically where our interaction stops. There's 8 mills here that actually own a refinery around Gramercy area, and it's called LSR. And so we have to produce a grade A sugar that is delivered to LSR. There's 3 mills in the state of Louisiana that will deliver their sugar to Domino. And so it's very different processing. And LSR, they have their own marketing team that will market our sugar based on whether it's going to animal feed, based where it's going to table sugar, if it's the amount. So how that happens is their customers request what type of sugar they want. If they want powdered sugar, if they want crystallized sugar, if they want liquid sugar. So they will sell the sugar in different forms. However, we as producers are not capable of any of those contracts. Our product stops as our raw when we bring it to the mill. That's it. That's where our decision-making stops on where the sugar is allocated.
Got it. Wow. Interesting business model for sure. Okay, I'm going to pull in, Kassi. I'm going to pull in Madison Lachney with Helena. Madison, welcome to FieldLink.
How you doing, Bill?
Good, man. It's good to have you back here on the FieldLink podcast. Hey, Madison, could you take a moment and just kind of introduce yourself to our guests and audience here? Tell us a little bit about you and what your role is at Helena.
Yes, Bill. So I live in South Louisiana, right outside of Lafayette, and I've been with Helena for 10 years now, and I've recently went from the operation side of Helena into a sales role now.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about Madison, how you work with Kassi on her operation, and some of the things you do on a, I guess, day-to-day basis.
I guess with Helena, we pride ourselves on partnership with our growers. And I would say, our goal is to be a resource to our growers and not just a supplier. We're there for them for anything they need, even if it's they're out of town and we go take their dogs out. You laugh, but it's true. And we just pride ourselves for being a partner with them on their farm. We're their extra set of eyes.
Yeah, that's excellent. And that's so true for many of our folks working in our field sales force and operations force. We certainly want to partner with our customers because at the end of the day, we're all in the same community. And a lot of times we serve on the same school boards and coach the same softball and baseball teams as well. And a lot of times go to the same church. So that's awesome, Madison. Madison, tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you all have faced that was featured in this episode. We had some invasive weed species issues. Tell us a little bit about your experience with that.
Divine nightshade is a large woody broadleaf, and the nightshade is very, very invasive. In fact, they can be anywhere from a 50 to 60% yield loss if not controlled.
Yeah, that's pretty invasive when you see 50 to 60% yield get knocked down like that. Madison, how long has that problem been involved in the sugarcane business? When did we discover that?
It's about 9 years ago. We started seeing it down here in South Louisiana, and it was very surprising. I mean, it took a lot of people to look at it, and at first they were questioning if it really was divine nightshade. They had never seen it down here.
Kassi, when was the first time you saw it on your farm, Divine Nightshade?
So this was probably before I even bought the farm from my dad. It was probably, I guess, about 10 years ago. We didn't know what this was. Like Madison said, it looked like a bush, and it was growing in the middle of fields. And so we were really concerned about what this unknown species was. And so we made a phone call, and we had members of LSU come down and take a look at it. And that's whenever it was discovered was Divine Nightshade. We think that it came from North Louisiana on bean combine issue is what my dad kind of said in our conversations that we've had about it. And since then, we've really took control over it with, thank goodness that we have Trycera, triclopyr that's been labeled for sugarcane in our area because it's really taking care of the problem. Now, in the video, as you see, it was on my headland. You can see that in the video. And I actually didn't know about it until that day.
Oh, heck.
So, I mean, it was a perfect opportunity. However, I couldn't believe that it was on my headland on that day because we hadn't had nightshade in a few years. One thing that I use is I do use Trycera. I'm a big believer in Trycera and the product. I use it with other chemistries in order to control Bermuda grasses and other invasive grasses and vines on my farm. However, I didn't know that we had divine nightshade at the time, which
Oh,
I
sure.
couldn't believe that. Yes. So we are big proponents of Trycera on my farm, and I have used it, and it has been absolutely real reliable, something that I can look for that's real reliable on my farm, and something that I always do request from Madison and for Helena because I know that it's very capable of taking care of my needs that I need throughout the year.
Well, it's really exciting. It sounds like that product certainly works. And Madison, I'm sure you've got a lot of experience working with Trycera as well.
Yes. So Tricera is very good on woody broadleaves, and Tricera is the only labeled triclopyr in the sugarcane market. It's an acid formulation that enhances the uptake into the plant for a better kill. And like Kassi said, it's very diverse. We've used it, not only to control divine nightshade, but it take mixes very well, and we also use it to help suppress Bermuda grass. Or there's a new broadleaf that they're seeing in southern Louisiana now that is called loofah, and they're using it Tricera on that as well.
Wow, and having some pretty good success with that, are they?
Yes, they are. DeMoss could probably speak a little bit more on the loofah than myself. We don't see it much over here yet.
Okay. Well, great segue. Let's bring in James DeMoss, who's a product specialist. James, you've certainly been involved with bringing Trycera into the marketplace, especially during that crazy time about 9 years ago when this invasive weed really, this nightshade popped its head up, and you worked with LSU and some of the team at Helena to get Trycera labeled. Tell us about that journey.
That was a very interesting journey. So when we first discovered divine nightshade in the field, we kind of threw the kitchen sink at it, and not really anything was very effective upon it. So we tried Tricera, and it did a fabulous job. So once we found out, okay, we have a cure for this ailment, then we started partnering with LSU. We started working with the sugarcane weed specialists. We started working with the LSU Extension. LSU partnered with us, and then Michael Kenty took over the journey, and they went to Washington multiple times. We also reached out to other companies and other industries to try to get some support and get this piece rolling. LSU immediately, once they figured out we had something, they gave us a Section 18, and we only had a limited time frame or window frame that we could actually utilize the product. Well, once that kind of got going and they kept going and they learned, it was a true learning because when they go in to vote, they found out if you didn't vote for everything, you would kind of get blackballed. So once they learned that, the next year was kind of a new learning curve. And it took about 6 years to get the product with a full registration label for sugarcane.
I think it really points out, Kassi, that, the spirit of the land grant university is still in play. And the folks at the LSU Ag Center are certainly living that out by providing, quality research and quality genetics to sugarcane producers in Louisiana.
Absolutely. And, whenever my dad first started farming back in the 80s, at that time we were producing sugar. Maybe that was only about 2,500 to 3,000 pounds per acre in production. And now we're seeing sugarcane varieties that are producing anywhere from 8, 9, 10,000 pounds of sugar per acre. So where we first started with sugarcane production and the genetics of sugarcane, as opposed to now, has been tremendous leaps and bounds. And they produce quality products for us.
Well, it's amazing to see how genetics has really advanced over time and really helping, the overall footprint from a sustainability standpoint. And things are just becoming more and more efficient, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Bill, this is just a prime example of where innovation never stops.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're certainly doing it here in our laboratories at the Helena Products Group. But, our partners, like the folks at LSU Ag Center, are certainly focused on innovation, especially for the grower in sugarcane country.
And it's really important that the innovation and the technology that they, our suppliers as producers, provide to us are top notch.
Definitely is a core focus for all of us involved in this industry and partnering with folks like LSU. We certainly want to keep those growers profitable. And that's our mission here at Helena as well.
Bill, with the evolution of agriculture in the state that it's in, you have to have the collaboration from the growers to listen to what they need, to working with university systems to kind of help provide the research and direction. And then it's our job to come up with the products that's needed for the success of the entire agriculture community. And at the end of the day, as I said, innovation never stops. And it's all because of the evolution of agriculture that we're in. Technology keeps stepping up, genetics change, fertility requirements change, and that's where we all have to work together in a platform to make everything come together and congeal together.
Definitely a journey and a great story in terms of collaboration between the growers, Helena, LSU in this case, and really the EPA to bring that producer a solution. What?
It really was. I mean, in some states, you have issues between the industry and the universities. This was something where we worked in collaboration with each other. We had a problematic situation in the field. We actually had the resolution. The universities tested, tried it, seen the success they had, and then we needed them as much as they needed us to get this label to provide a solution for our growers that's in the field. And yes, it was one of the true great collaborations of our time.
Wow, great story there in terms of collaboration for the greater good. James, let's take a second though. Let's break down Trycera. Let's get into that a little bit deeper. What is Trycera and what really makes it special and different?
Most of your triclopyrs in the marketplace is based off of salt. Madison already alluded to that we have a special acid formulation, which is a Moveo formulation technology that we utilize to make this product. And the great part about that is most other products, the salt has to be converted into the acid. With Trycera and the Moveo formulation technology, it's already in the acid form, which is what the plant takes up, which increases its uptake within the plant system. The Moveo formulation technology, when you combine it with other herbicides, there's a true synergy amongst most of the other herbicides. And that's the reason we're getting control and suppression of Bermuda grass. That's the reason we're getting control and suppression of tough weeds. That's the reason we're getting excellent control of this loofah. Matter of fact, when LSU discovered the loofah in the southern part of the cane belt, the first thing they actually tried was like, let's try Trycera. And then they tried it with a lot of the other chemistries. And that was the only product that provided 99% control. But that's what Trycera is. It's a very unique formulation. It has a very friendly blending technology. It has a low odor, low volatility. It's a very unique formulated product, and it's the only formulation of that type in the marketplace.
So Madison, it sounds like from what James just described, Trycera is pretty darn easy to handle, and it has a ton of tank mix capabilities.
That is correct.
So what are some products that Kassi, you and Kassi work with on her farm to help tank mix to, really see some overall success with this particular product?
So other formulations, things that I mix with Trycera would be Armazon. I also use a seaweed oil that I mix with those two chemistries in order to really suppress and control Bermuda grass. With Trycera and Armazon, that's what I normally spray for with the Divine Nightshade that we saw a problem with, that I actually sprayed right after that video that confirmed that it was Divine Nightshade there. So I use a lot of Trycera also in Latigo for helping with vines and anything in my V ditches or anything that to control around headlands or anything that's going to get into my crop, because whenever you're growing sugarcane, it's a tropical grass. And so one thing is, it's really important to control with herbicides is different grasses and invasive grasses that grow in the field, because then your sugarcane, which is a tropical grass, is competing for nutrients within your soil. The same soil that your nutrients have with grass and with your sugarcane. And so you want to give your sugarcane the best probability in order to receive and uptake the most nutrients. So you don't want it to be in competition with invasive grasses that are growing within your crop as well. And so that's really important to use different chemistries to give yourself, your best abilities to be able to grow and be profitable.
Yeah, it certainly does. Great approach there to spread out your different modes of action, different chemistries to control weed species, that have different challenges for us, doesn't it? Kassi, tell us a little bit. We're recording this just a little before Thanksgiving. How's harvest going? You mentioned earlier in the podcast you'll be going to Christmas. Bring us up to speed.
I definitely have to say we have been blessed this harvesting season with great weather. We haven't had any storms this year. We've had minimal rain throughout this harvesting season. We have been truly blessed. Whenever we have good weather like this, the mill is running to its optimal level and we have less breakdowns. It's a less costly harvesting for us. And so we have just been really excited, really blessed that we're going through harvesting so smoothly this year. And hopefully, we were hoping that we'd all be home by Christmas, but it doesn't seem that the case is going to be that way. The yields are looking good. The sugar is really well in this area. We've been truly, truly blessed so far. Moving forward, and hopefully we'll finish up in a great season as well, because we can't believe how easy, and not knock on wood, we can't believe how easy this season is for us so far, and we have about maybe 30 days left.
Wow. It's great that we're having wonderful weather for your production side of things. Kind of pivot a little bit here, but there's been a lot of chatter about sugarcane and pure cane sugar coming back into play. It's the hot new topic now that the Maha moment is happening out there. As a producer, are you starting to see an uptick in demand for cane sugar?
Well, I think the opportunity would be extremely beneficial for our industry. As the concern, not really the concern, but I think the excitement grows for the Maha movement. We're very, let's say, hopeful that it really will pan out for us in this area. And maybe in a few years, we may see some of that. I think that the chatter is making everyone a little excited about it. And a lot of people think that, everything is going to start now. We know that it's a slow process, especially with the cane sugar and many opportunities for us. We haven't really seen anything in the forefront immediately right now, but we're hoping down the line that, a product line development can mean so many different things for us. And we're very hopeful. We know that our product of real sugar is safe. We know that we put so much time and effort producing a safe product for our community, and for each of us that we consume our own product. And so we just try and be the best stewards of the land that we can and produce a safe product for everyone. We're heavily regulated throughout, our growing processes. And so we know that we're producing a great, safe product for our communities around us. So we're really excited for the opportunity that may come our way. We're hopeful that it may one day reach us, but for right now, where the uncertainty is still there.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. It's great that there's conversation being had. The light is certainly shining on the sugarcane industry. But if everything happened overnight, it would still take some time to probably get that product into the pipeline and into product development for future consumption and future products, for sure. But it is an exciting time.
Absolutely.
Folks, I want to thank you for joining us here on this episode of FieldLink as we dive into sugarcane and some of the neat things that we talked about and the Innovation Never Stops in series number 2, where we focused on Trycera and some of the challenging weeds that it has certainly helped growers suppress in the state of Louisiana. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Bill, for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Bill.
And welcome back to FieldLink. I'm your host, Bill Smith, and we've got Jody Lawrence joining us here from Nashville. Jody, we continue to get lots of different themes coming out of the marketplace as it relates to trade and China, and we got some things happening in the cattle industry as well. Jody, welcome to FieldLink.
Thank you, Bill. It's good to be back as we start recording this on Thanksgiving Monday. And just the reality of a late Thanksgiving is that we are 4 weeks away from Christmas Eve. Should probably really wake everybody up about how little of the year we have left.
It is amazing. This year is blowing by and it's holiday season and everything is getting crammed into one short week this week, Thanksgiving week. Certainly the markets are going to be closed Thanksgiving Day and I believe Friday as well. So, okay, Jody, meanwhile, we got a lot of things trading right now with China. Not as much as we'd like. A lot of noise, but little trade, right?
Yeah, when the market got the really big rally that weekend or that Sunday night when we opened after Secretary Bessent and President Trump announced this great new Chinese trade deal several weeks ago, and there were huge tonnages of soybeans promised, 350 to 400 million bushels, and some of the market anticipated that the Chinese had been buying futures through the Chicago Board of Trade before that time because the market was rallying kind of unexpectedly in the uncertainty of the trade deal. But what we have found is they are not buying anywhere close to the numbers promised in the actual cash market. We keep getting very slow trickle of smaller sales, 3-4 million bushel sales that just we can't add up to really make a dent in how big we thought the trade deal was going to be. And the market had a little bit of a spark this morning, rallied from 10 lower to 8 higher momentarily because the president released that he had spoken to President or to Chairman Z about trade, beans, ag products, fentanyl, Ukraine-Russian war, just a variety of topics. And then the market and the algo computer traders saw that soybean line and that word in there. They reacted, bought it pretty aggressively, only to find out that they may have talked about it, but there were very, very few specifics and nothing about the very slow pace that China has started out in this first 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks since they said they were going to be buying significantly more.
Certainly very, very slow and, action on their part. And, Jody, I talked to some other analysts recently and that were at some conferences. Kind of the question out there, too, is does China really, are they looking for other protein sources beyond soybeans? And that's something that kind of raised my eyebrows and thought, that could be an aha moment. Are there some other protein sources beyond soybeans that they might be looking at to service their needs? And catching us all off guard a little bit.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of their economy is still in bad shape, and there are so many other sources, as you mentioned, and as you look through, where they could be going, who they could be doing business with to get the protein that they normally source out of beans, bean meal, and bean oil. There's any number of places they could go, and China in no way is held to doing business with us. They can say they want to do all the business that they can, but when our beans are anywhere from $1.50 to $2 a bushel higher than what's coming out of Argentina and Brazil as they sweep out their bins in anticipation of early harvest starting in January, it puts everything into context that they're going to buy what they need to kind of keep the trade deal alive and then source whatever else they need. But they are running out of storage in their government and commercial storage facilities in their elevators and having to do government auctions just to get the beans out to rotate them so they don't go bad. And it's not the best scenario that the largest user of beans in the world really is in a position where they just don't need anymore.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy right now. And as you mentioned, they've got other sources, and some of those sources right now are having some pretty darn good growing seasons down in South America. Let's talk a little bit about what the news is in terms of growing season in Brazil and Argentina right now.
It has really been a Goldilocks season so far. Their early planting in Brazil in their full year crop cycles in those regions has gone exceptionally well. It started back in mid-September with you've got pollination in a lot of the corn areas, the early corn areas starting in December. You've got early bean harvest coming in January, and to this point they've not had any significant widespread yield stress. They've had plenty of water, enough warm and hot temperatures to get everything out of the ground and growing well, and really not in a position where they're worried about La Nina or El Nino, because it's still pretty much a very neutral INSO cycle that nobody sees changing quickly enough to what would normally be a concern for the South American growing season. And when you start talking about a 8+ billion bushel bean crop and somewhere, in the little less than half of ours, a 6 to 7 billion bushel corn crop, we're in the cycle, continuing the cycle that we've seen the last 2.5, 3 years of record production in all the major production countries and regions, and the world demand just has not expanded at the pace that all this new innovation and all the new genetics and farming practices are able to coax out of an acre when Mother Nature decides to behave and help them out.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement right there, and a lot of uncertainty. But boy, right now things look pretty good for the growing season in South America, and certainly going to impact the overall global position likely in supply moving forward. Okay, Jody, let's pivot a little bit to the cattle side of the business. Big news coming over the weekend in Lexington, Nebraska. Tyson Foods makes an announcement they're going to close down one of their largest plants. I believe that's covering around, when we start looking at the total plants cut down, around 7% of the total production for processing. Lexington, Nebraska, that Tyson plant gonna eliminate around 3,200 jobs locally there in Lexington. That's a big impact to that community. But stepping back, looking at the overall picture for production, the cattle numbers just aren't there, are they, Jody?
Now, I think one of the numbers I read, and this may be a little bit off because of my faulty memory, but they were processing 4,000 head a day.
Yep.
And when you start looking at kind of the weird part of today, because on this Monday today, the live cattle and feeders opened limit down, which is 725 and 925. And now everybody has to figure, especially in that area, Nebraska in particular, with all the feedlots, where are they going to take these animals? And with the other plants now having more inventory to choose from, despite the fact that the grocery stores still need every head that could be processed, it's really a tough time, because once the prices got out of balance, just like have seen throughout history, high prices cured high prices because it got the attention of all the people that fight food inflation, certainly this administration. And then when you start looking at how to cure high prices, when that plug is pulled, the air comes out of the balloon very quickly. And Tyson did it for a business reason. It certainly was not anything associated or pressure from the administration, but you've had a lot of things go wrong in the cattle market in a very short period of time, that the one really profitable leg of on-farm diversification is now under immense pressure.
Yeah, based on the reports I hear, that decision by Tyson in Lexington, Nebraska, they were losing $500,000 a year. And the bottom line is the cattle numbers simply are not there. We're at the lowest stock rate in beef since the 50s. And while it really is going to impact the community of Lexington, Nebraska, from a larger perspective, it's really not going to put a dent in the overall supply chain, simply because we just don't have the beef numbers there today. So 500 million, if they close this plant down for 4 or 5 years, that's a pretty big move on their part.
Yeah, it's feel bad for everybody in the cattle industry because it wasn't telegraphed as much to where everybody could have gone out and put a floor underneath it, whether it's through puts, forward sales, things like that. And now everybody is scrambling how to figure out that, what am I going to do with these feeders that I bought for $325 a month and a half ago? Now that the price of cattle have fallen nearly 20%.
Yeah, kind of crazy things happening in the cattle business right now. What else we got, Jody?
Really, those are the three things to focus on. We'll start at South American weather. That's doing great, and that big crop is on the way sooner rather than later. And if China is not going to follow through on the trade deal, this really starts to look exactly like the phase one trade deal in late 2019, where there were the best of intentions and the best of agreements, but at no real way to enforce it. And if China doesn't follow through, the only thing really that President Trump can do is reapply the tariffs. So this is far from being over, and you just have to hope that there is some major impact positively in demand. And as the EPA and the USDA sit on making the small refinery exemption final decisions, it's going to take something big like an expansion, or at least a lot of obvious political support for the sustainable aviation fuel and more biofuel made out of our crops to help put a dent in these record yields that we continue to see across the world.
At the end of the day, we've got a lot of more focus happening in Washington, certainly going to impact agriculture moving forward here in the next really 30, 40 days as some of these big decisions come in play, and we continue to monitor the international trade and some of the tariff action that's taking place across the globe. Jody, I want to thank you for joining us here on this episode of FieldLink, and encourage our folks to, if you're enjoying this episode of FieldLink and interested in this type of information, be sure to sign up for the FieldLink Market Report on HelenaAgri.com, and Jody will get you a message every day in your inbox and the highlights of the daily market. Thanks for joining us on this episode of FieldLink. Be sure to check out the Innovation Never Stops series, which can be found at HelenaAgri.com/Innovation Never Stops, and check out all of these fine video episodes.